Darkly Dreaming Dexter, Chapter 23. I am pretty sure that Deborah took young Mr. Bad Hair Day back to the lounge because when I looked up again, she was standing in front of me, alone. In spite of her blue uniform, she did not look at all like a cop right now. She looked worried, like she couldn't decide whether to yell or to cry, like a mommy whose special little boy had let her down in a big way. Well, she demanded, and I had to agree that she had a point. Not terribly, I said. You? Shit, tell me something. Tell me that wasn't you. I didn't say anything. Well, then tell me it is you. Just something, anything at all. I shook my head. I. There was really nothing to say, so I just shook my head again. I'm pretty sure it isn't me, I said. I mean, I don't think so. Even to me, what does that mean, I'm pretty sure? Deb demanded, does that mean you're not sure that it might be you in that picture? Well, I said, a truly brilliant riposte, considering. Maybe I don't know. Or, and does, I don't know, mean you don't know whether you're going to tell me? Or does it mean that you really don't know if that's you in the picture? I'm pretty sure it isn't me, Deborah, I repeated. But I really don't know for sure. It looks like me, doesn't it? Shit, she said, and kicked the chair where it lay. It slammed into the table. How can you not know? God damn it. It is a little tough to explain. Try. I opened my mouth, but for once in my life, nothing came out. As if everything else wasn't bad enough, I seemed to be all out of clever, too. I just, I've been having these dreams. But Deb, I really don't know, I said, and I may have actually mumbled it. Shit, fucking Deborah said. Kick. And it was very hard to disagree with her analysis of the situation. All of my stupid self-mutilating musings swam back at me with a bright and mocking edge. Of course it wasn't me. How could it be me? Wouldn't I know if it was me? Apparently not, dear boy. Apparently you didn't actually know anything at all, because our deep, dark, little dim brain tells us all kinds of things that swim in and out of reality, but pictures do not lie. Deb unleashed a new volley of savage attacks on the chair and then straightened up. Her face was flushed and very red. Her eyes looked more like Harry's eyes than they've ever before. All right, she said. It's like this. And she blinked and paused for a moment as it occurred to both of us that she had just said a Harry thing. And for a second, Harry was there in the room between me and Deborah, the two of us so very different and yet still both Harry's kids, the two strange fists of his unique legacy. Some of the steel went out of Deb's back and looked human again. A thing I hadn't seen for a while. She stared at me for a long moment, and then I turned away. You're my brother, Dex, she said. I was very sure that I was not what she originally intended to say. No one will blame you, I told her. God damn you, you're my brother, she snarled, and the ferocity of it took me completely by surprise. I don't know what went on with you and Dad, the stuff you two never talked about, but I know what he would have done. Turned me in, I said. Deborah nodded. Something glittered in the corner of her eye. You're all the family I have, Dex. Not such a great bargain for you, is it? She turned to me. I could see tears in both eyes now. For a moment, she just looked at me. I watched the tear run up from her left eye and roll down to her cheek. She wiped it, straightened up, and took a deep breath, turning away to the window once again. "That's right," she said. "He would have turned you in, which is what I'm going to do." She looked right away from me out the window, far from out to the horizon. "I have to finish these interviews," she said. "I'm leaving you in charge of determining if this evidence is relevant. Take it to your computer at home and figure out whatever you have to figure out. And when I'm done here, before I go back out on duty, I'm coming back to get it, to hear what you have to say." She glanced back at her watch. 8 o'clock. "And if I have to take you in, then I will." She looked back at me for a very long moment. "God damn it, Dexter," she said softly, and she left the room. I moved over to the window and had a look for myself below the circus of cops and reporters and gawking geeks swirling unchanged. Far away behind the parking lot, I could see the expressway filled with cars and trucks blasting along the Miami speed limit of 95 miles per hour. And beyond that, in the dim distance, was the high-rise skyline of Miami. And here in the foreground stood dim, dazed Dexter, staring out at the window of a city that did not speak and would not have told him anything, even if it did. God damn it, Dexter. I don't know how long I stared out the window, but it eventually occurred to me that there were no answers out there. There might be some, though, on Captain Pimple's computer. I turned to the desk, the machine that had a CD-RW drive. In the top drawer, I found a box of recordable CDs. I put one into the drive, copied the entire file of pictures, and took the CD out. I held it, glanced at it. It didn't have much to say, and I probably imagined the faint chuckling I thought I heard from the dark voice in the back seat. But just to be safe, I wiped the file from the hard drive. On my way out, the Broward cops on duty didn't stop me or even speak to me, but it did seem to me that they looked at me with a very hard and suspicious indifference. I wondered if this was what it felt like to have a conscience. I supposed I would never really know, unlike poor Deborah, being torn apart by too many loyalties that could never possibly live together in the same brain. I admired her solution, leaving me in charge of determining if the evidence was relevant. Very neat. It had felt very hairy feel to it, like leaving a loaded gun on the table in front of a guilty friend and walking away, knowing that guilt would pull the trigger and save the city the cost of a trial. In Harry's world, a man's conscience couldn't live with that kind of shame. But as Harry had known very well, his world was long dead, and I did not have any conscience, shame, or guilt. All I had was a CD with a few pictures on it. And of course, those pictures made even less sense than a conscience. There had to be some explanation that did not involve Dexter driving a truck around Miami in his sleep. Of course, most of the drivers on the road seemed to manage it. But they were at least partially awake when they started out, weren't they? And here I was, all bright-eyed and cheerfully alert, and not at all the kind of guy who would ever prowl the city and kill unconsciously. No, I was the kind of guy who wanted to be awake for every moment of it. And to get right down to the bottom line, there was the night of on the causeway. It was physically impossible that I could have thrown the head at my own car, wasn't it? Unless I had made myself believe that I could be in two places at once, which made a great deal of sense, considering that the only alternative I could come up with was me believing that I only thought I had been sitting there in my car, watching someone else throw the head, when in fact I had actually thrown the head at my own car, and then, no. Ridiculous. I could not ask the last few shreds of my brain to believe in this kind of fairy tale. There would be some very simple, logical explanation, and I would find it. And even though I sounded like a young man trying to convince himself that there was nothing under the bed, I said it out loud. There is a simple, logical explanation, I said to myself. And because you never know who else is listening, I added, and there's nothing under the bed. But once again, The only reply was a very meaningful silence from the dark passenger. In spite of the usual cheerful bloodlust of the other drivers, I found no answers on the drive home. Or, to be perfectly truthful, I found no answers that made sense. There were plenty of stupid answers, but they all revolved around the same central premise, which was that all was not well in the skull of our favorite monster, and I found this very hard to accept. Perhaps it was only that I did not feel any crazier than I had ever felt. I did not notice any missing gray tissue. I did not seem to be thinking any slower or more strangely, and so far I had no conversations with invisible buddies that I was aware of. Except in my sleep, of course. And did that really count? Weren't we all crazy in our sleep? What was sleep, after all, but the process by which we dump all of our insanity into a dark subconscious pit and come out on the other side and eat cereal instead of the neighbor's children? And aside from the dreams I'd had, everything made sense. Someone else had thrown the head at me on the causeway, left a Barbie in my apartment, and arranged the bodies in intriguing ways. Someone else, not me. Someone other than dear Dark Dexter. And someone else was finally captured right here in the pictures on this CD. And I would look at these pictures and prove once and for all that it looked very much like the killer might be me. Good, Dexter. Very good. I told you there was a logical explanation. Someone else who was actually me, of course. That made wonderful sense, didn't it? I got home and peeked into my apartment carefully. There did not appear to be anyone waiting for me. There was no reason why there should have been, of course, but knowing that this arch-fiend who was terrorizing the metropolis knew where I lived was a little unsettling. He had proven he was a kind of monster who might do anything. He could even come in and leave more doll parts at any time, especially if he was me. Which, of course, he was not. Certainly not. The pictures would show some small something to prove that the resemblance was only coincidental, and the fact that I was so strangely attuned to the murders was also coincidental, no doubt. Yes, this was clearly a series of perfectly logical, monstrous coincidences. Perhaps I should call the Guinness Book people. I wondered what the world record for not being sure whether you committed a string of murders was or not. I put on a Phillips Glass CD and sat on my chair. The music stirred in the emptiness inside me, and after a few minutes of something like my usual calm and icy logic returned. I went to my computer and turned it on. I put the CD into the drive and looked at the pictures. I zoomed in and out and did everything I knew how to do in an attempt to clean up the images. I tried things I had only heard about and things that I made up on the spot, and nothing worked. At the end, I was no further along than I had been when I started. It was just not possible to get enough resolution to make the face of the man in the picture come clear. Still, I stared at the pictures. I moved them around to different angles, I printed them out, and I held them up to the light. I did everything a normal person would do, and while I was pleased with my imitation, I did not discover anything except that the man in the picture looked like me. I just could not get a clear impression of anything, even his clothing. He wore a shirt that could have been white or tan or yellow or even light blue. The parking lot light that shone on him was one of the bright argon anti-crime lights, and it cast a pinkish-orange glow. Between that and the lack of resolution in the picture, it was impossible to tell anymore. His pants were long, loosely cut, lightly colored, altogether a standard outfit that anyone might have worn, including me. I had clothing like it. I had worn it several times over, enough to outfit an entire platoon of Dexter lookalikes. I did manage to zoom in on the side of the truck close enough to make out the letter A, and below it a B, followed by an R and either a C or an O. But the truck was angled in a way from the camera away, and that's all that I could see. None of the other pictures offered me any hints. I watched the sequence again. The man vanished, reappeared, and then the van was gone. No good angles, no fortuitous accidental glimpses of his license plate, and no reason to say with any authority that it either was or was not deftly dreaming Dexter. When I finally looked up from the computer, night had come, and it was dark outside. And I did what a normal person almost certainly would have done several hours ago. I quit. There was nothing else I could do except to wait for Deborah. I would have to let my poor, tormented sister haul me away to jail. After all, one way or another, I was guilty. I really should be locked up. Perhaps I could even share a cell with Mikhail. He could teach me that rat dance. And with that thought, I did truly wonderful things. I fell asleep.